One day more.
That's it?
Another day, another destiny.
Hamza?
It's never-ending road to Calvary.
Where's the child, Cosette?
Tomorrow you'll be worlds away.
Who was that girl?
Cosette.
And yet with you my world has started.
But he never saw me
One day more to revolution, nipped in the bud. We'll be ready for these schoolboys. They'll make themselves with blood.
To the barricade!
So, that should have been some of the trailer for Les Miserables. This is the 2012 film, I don't know why I said the year, 2012 film adaptation from director Tom Hooper. It stars Hugh Jackman. Thank you. That's exactly right, because I'm thorough. Because years from now, when people look up this podcast in the whatever, it stars Hugh Jackman as Jean Valjean, a convict who was in prison for 20 years of his life, 19 years of his life, whatever. People that write in, and he's freed from his sentence, but he's still going to be hounded by the prison guard Javert, played by Russell Crowe, who's just an inspector in general. And Jean Valjean he's on parole, but he basically kind of breaks his parole, and Javert kind of pursues him all the way through his life from this point. During this time, Jean Valjean takes on a new identity where he gets some more kind of higher standing in life, and this allows him to cross paths with a character named Fontaine, played by Fontaine. I don't know. Fontaine, played by
Were they the great-grandfather of Prefontaine?
Exactly. Fontaine, played by Anne Hathaway, who has a daughter. Fontaine, who has a daughter named Cosette. Things happen which lead to Jean Valjean taking custody of Cosette. Years later, Jean Valjean and Cosette get involved with not the French Revolution, but a revolution going on in France during the 1830s. And with Javert still hot on his feet, because he's hot for Jean Valjean. So, lots of musical accompaniment ensues. All that said, Alan Aguilera, what did you think of Les Miserables?
I had this thing where I really, really like musicals. I'm not going to go front. I like them. I enjoy them. I hate Rent, though.
Nice.
This one isn't... I can't stand it. I think it's a stupid show. There. Hate mail. I don't care. I thought it was okay. I think that the performances by Anne Hathaway and Hugh Jackman and Eddie whatever his name was, were really good.
Redmayne.
But yeah, that guy. Ginger. The Ginger did good. For once.
Marius.
He's a gingery, man. And then, I liked it, and then there was Russell Crowe, and I thought he wasn't as bad as Pierce Brosnan, and that's kind of how I kind of judge all music performances.
Based off Pierce Brosnan, Mamma Mia, I got it.
Yeah, I can't. If you're better than that, then we're fine. And I thought he was okay. He was serviceable, but Anne Hathaway blew me away. Hugh Jackman did really good, and Adam Gentry's crazy.
Friend of the show, Adam Gentry, had some harsh words.
Oh man, shanking him.
Yeah, Adam Shankry. I just enjoyed it, but I think that Tom Hooper was the biggest hindrance to the film, more so than Russell Crowe. It just he over-directed it when he didn't need to. His best direction was just leaving the camera still for the Anne Hathaway scene and just letting her do her thing. But there were times when he's like, "Oh, I got to move the camera around and kind of be bouncy because I just need to, just to kind of make it that epic feel." When he doesn't need to because the film on its own is fun. The story is epic. It takes place over 50 years. Like, you don't need to add all this extra panache that he felt he needed just to kind of say, hey, give me an award, or hey, this is the movie you guys want. When, if he casted it right, he didn't need all that extra hullabaloo. So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, lots of panache. Ken, what did you think?
I loved it. So let me just preface it real quick. Les Miserables is one of my favorite stories, just in general. I've just really enjoyed it. It's an amazing story of redemption, giving second chances, how other people or different people react to those given chances. So I also love musicals, love operas, and so I really enjoyed it. But I had some issues with the directing. I had some issues with some of the singing. So, like was mentioned before, it was a little over-directed. There were a couple scenes where I actually started to feel a little nauseous when they were introducing the first town that they were in. It was just cutting between people at odd beats that weren't synced up with the music. It was a little overwhelming at times. But once all the characters were introduced, the camera settled down, it turned into just a really beautifully done story. And the casting was almost completely phenomenal. I had some issues with Russell Crowe. I'll get into that at a later point. But Anne Hathaway, Amanda Seyfried, even Sacha Baron Cohen, they all just killed it, and I really enjoyed what they did with it.
Yep.
I thought it was average. I don't know if I felt as though it was a spectacle that I thought it was going to be, and I didn't really have any expectations going into the film, primarily because I had only read snippets of the play, and I'd never seen any stage production or I'd seen any previous film for this, or a film version of Les Mis. So, going in, I didn't really have too many things to think about, but I thought that it was okay. It wasn't great, and it wasn't, the singing I thought was just okay from some of the people. I mean, I think that what you guys have pointed out before, Anne Hathaway, yeah, also young Cosette, that little girl who sings the Castle in the Clouds song, which I thought was fantastic. Also, Eponine, young or older Eponine, and Amanda Seyfried, and also Eddie. But other than that, I wasn't huge on Hugh Jackman. I wasn't huge on Russell Crowe, and at times I felt as though they kind of clashed because I've listened to the score before, or I guess I've listened to the original London Cast album like multiple times because my sister used to play it on road trips. And so I have this notion of what I want One Day More to sound like, and when I heard One Day More in the movie, I wasn't as affected. So overall, I mean, the whole entire film, I wasn't as affected, except for maybe the last part of the film, for the reprisal song. But other than that, yeah, I didn't think it was anything to go home and shout about and sing from the rooftops.
Yeah, in terms of, I guess where I'm coming from with Les Miserables, I'm very familiar with Les Miserables, the story of Les Miserables. I'm very familiar with the story of Les Miserables. I know the book, I know the musical, and even the various films that have taken place over the years, including the most recent one, the 1998 film with Liam Neeson. Going to this musical, I guess I would say I was pretty excited just because I was looking forward to it. I really liked what I was seeing from these trailers and just kind of the scope that was being given off from the the trailers being shown. So it was kind of to my surprise that the movie didn't feel epic enough, which comes down to the direction, which we've talked about already. You start out with this great shot of, them coming into the ships being pulled in and all this stuff, and it's like, all right, yeah, this looks pretty awesome. But then everything else seemed to be either a close-up or a medium shot, which was very strange to me, given the nature of the story and how much there is to cover. Yet Tom Hooper decided to, when he wasn't just flinging the camera around, he had it, right up in the face of everybody. So that was kind of disconcerting. With that kind of leads to another thought that I'll get to later. But with that said, I did come away liking the film overall because I do think that the performances, namely from Jackman, from Anne Hathaway, and from Samantha Barks, who I liked as Eponine, and from Marius as well, Eddie Redmayne, I think those are very well done. I think they do a great job of singing, but also just kind of emoting in what they're given to do. And I say the same for Russell Crowe, but I have a specific issue with that I'll get to as well. But overall, I do think it's certainly not a. It's called The Miserable, so I mean it has a depressing element to it, but I do think it has the kind of thing that will make an audience kind of be very kind of they'll get with it by the end of it. I think so there's enough rousing numbers in it to make it kind of a crowd pleasing film overall, and I appreciate that fact despite the problems that I do have with it.
Yeah, no, I mean absolutely. There was a lot of sniffling in the theater that I was at. Even the person who was sitting next to me, I don't know who this person was, but she needed tissues after the first 10 minutes of the movie. So I mean, it's a very moving subject matter.
And if you want to talk about yourself, you can. You don't have to put it on some other person.
Yeah. But again, for me, I don't know, maybe I was spoiled with that whole entire, London cast and I just didn't really feel as though the voices all meshed all that well together. And I think that you talked about it with Russell Crowe a lot too. He's got a very gruff voice, but then when he sings, and I know that he sings, he's got a band, but it sounded not as, I don't want to say unpolished, but it just didn't really mesh well.
I'll say this, like we can mention this too, I think people know this already, we've talked about it before, but the film was done live. The singing was done on set, as opposed to being kind of pre-recorded and then put in on top of the actors' voices. It was actually done in the scenes, and that's neat, and I really like, and it provides some naked performances that are really kind of interesting. The way you're literally hearing their emotions come through in their song. But for some reason, Russell Crowe seems like the one that, even though I know he did it live, it's the only one that kind of doesn't seem like it was done live. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Alan, Ken?
Yeah, no, he seemed kind of dead on arrival with a lot of his. It's just very monotone. I am Javert. That's kind of how his voice went. He didn't really go too many different octaves. Yeah, he was a sing talker. So
that's a good way of categorizing a sing talker.
Although it's about getting people riled up, and I know Abe was talking about the person next to him, which Abe, don't spare me. But the person the person next to me, it was an older white lady, and it was so loud that she was like, "Oh my goodness, it makes my ribs hurt," and I couldn't stop.
Which is how older white ladies talk.
Listen, if I can't say the word you won't let me say, let me at least do the voice of whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, not to rag on Russell Crowe too much. Just want to give my 2 cents and move on from that. The role of Javert is a character choosing that he really fits the personality, which he carries himself in a way that you just really feel like he's this intimidating overseer, just paragon of justice. But his role is just out of his vocal range. And so the points when he's singing lower bass, lower mid bass, he sounds really good. But most of the songs are higher bass. And so he's stretching his voice, and he sounds very much like a slightly out of tune viola, which kind of sounds like a goose. So he's got this weird noise in his voice that is really distracting at times.
Now, prisoner 24601, your time is up and your parole's begun. You know what that means.
Yes, means I'm free.
No. Follow to the letter your itinerary. This badge of shame you'll show it till you die. It warns you're a dangerous man.
Stole a loaf of bread.
But adding on quickly to what Aaron was mentioning earlier is they didn't just sing this live. Something that actually really added to the benefit of this performance was they actually let the singers set the tempo of the songs. So it's not like the sheet music that they in the live performance where they follow the exact tempo, the orchestra, the pianist set the mood, set the tempo, and they just follow via the script. They actually had a pianist accompanying them and added the orchestra at a later point. So they allowed the actors to act it out and sing and stretch out certain points to really emphasize what they're trying to say, and I think it really heavily added to the what they're trying to communicate, because it allowed you to really hear what they're saying. There was so many plot points that I had previously missed and I had no idea. And even with Javert, so it's true that Russell Crowe's singing live. It didn't really seem like he did because he was straining so much. But I think what killed that the most for him was the first two times he sings. It's in the beginning, the prologue of the performance. He actually speaks a sentence beforehand. So unlike the play, they added some verbal dialogue to help the viewers to understand what's happening. And so you get in this groove of, okay, here's an actor I know, this is what he sounds like, and then suddenly he jumps into this forced, kind of goosey voice that throws you for a loop. And so it's unfortunately distracting, but overall everyone else sounded very good.
No.
But real quick, Abe, how many times did you cry in this? Don't just
Never.
figure out other people.
Well, I mean, like I got misty-eyed at the last song in the church, but the other songs, I didn't feel that that spine-tingling. Yeah, I do want to join the revolution, which I do feel when I listen to the soundtrack, not the film soundtrack, but again, like the play production soundtrack. So again, I do feel those kinds of emotions, and that's kind of what I was thinking maybe, because the trailers, especially with just Anne Hathaway singing "I Dreamed a Dream," it was very, it's very emotional. It's very nice, and you feel the pain and anguish. And you do. She does a great job in the film, but just some of the other songs. I mean, I will say that when Marius sings, the song after all of his comrades have gone to battle, that one was pretty effective too. And I think that actor did a very fine job. So, not too many of them that I was moved by.
Yeah. Oh, you're speaking of Empty Chairs and Empty Tables?
Yeah, that one.
Song he's talking about, yeah.
I think there were 3 actual musical highlights in the film, and it's like one in each act. You had the Dreaming of a Dream. I forget what it's called because I'm too busy sobbing through it. No, the Anne Hathaway Dream a Dream. There's Empty Chairs and Empty Tables at the end, and then Sacha Baron Cohen and Helena Bonham Carter's Innkeeper song right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's so good. I thought it was really funny, and honestly, seeing them together was a nice little Sweeney Todd reunion in my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome. Like, Sacha Baron Cohen is great when he's not playing one of his characters, but when he's in Hugo, or he's in this, or he's in something like that. I'm starting to appreciate that guy more and more.
I agree with that, and I have been a big proponent of kind of Sacha Baron Cohen in these kind of these roles that take advantage of his other talents aside from just being able to do kind of shock humor. And I did like him in this role, and I like Helena Bonham Carter in their role. And between the music, and maybe Ken, you can agree with me on this, I feel like they toned down the kind of the comic aspect of these characters more than in the stage play. Would you agree with that, Ken?
I would very much so,
because
but to the benefit.
I'm saying that because it already is kind of jarring when you get to Masters of the House based on, the fact that this movie, the scenes that precede that are, fairly dark. So you're getting to this Master of the House ditty, and it's the zaniest scene in the film, and the one that's most justifiably in need of, I guess, the crazy direction that Tom Hooper's trying to apply to the movie.
Right.
So it is kind of jarring, but it still kind of, I guess, fits in a sense. So yeah, I did appreciate those characters, especially because they're, the villains, and I don't, like those people, but they did make it, entertaining. So they're the villains of that movie, right? I mean, Javert, he's the antagonist, but the Threatenaires, they're the true villains of this. They're the only despicable people in this movie, and so it is nice to have those familiar faces that are talented actors in their own right performing these songs, and knowing that I know they can sing based on they've done this in the past. I mean, it worked well having those characters. I will say, in regards to kind of which songs made me react more, I really like Samantha Barks as Eponine in this movie. Her role. And she's the daughter of the Threatenaires, actually, and she kind of enters into this love triangle between her, Marius, and the older Cosette, played by Amanda Seyfried. And there's some songs involving her that I really enjoyed, and one in particular that kind of got to me more than I Dreamed a Dream did in terms of that character's state, and I was very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Samantha...
sorry, go ahead,
continue, Abe.
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just going to say that Samantha Barks, she actually also played Eponine in the 25th anniversary that came out 2 years ago. So this isn't her first foray. She just nails the role. She's just perfect for it. And so it's just like the scene you were talking about, Abe, with Marius and Cosette singing together and Eponine in the background, and just kind of her realizing she's in modern terms very much friend zoned, but
that's a great way to blend the two eras.
She's completely friend zoned, but it just
devastating. Baz Luhrmann's Les Miserables, where it's a modern version where it said friend zone.
Friend zone, yeah. Wah, wah, wah. No, Ken, just to add on to that, that's exactly what I was going to bring up too. Is like some of these folks are now in stage productions of Les Mis, and you can totally tell which ones were very affecting, and I think that's great for them. I do want to bring up, I thought about Great Gatsby, and I wonder why they moved it, and maybe if they were scared that Les Mis was going to steal all the thunder. But thinking about it now, like after I've seen Les Mis, I wonder how Great Gatsby is going to be. If it completely blows everybody out of the water.
I mean, that's not a musical.
I know, yeah, but I mean, like,
it's another period film. It's not
the beautiful, like, the crazy way that Baz Luhrmann does things, because it was going to open Christmas Day as well, and it just was a crowded Christmas, I guess, with Django.
That's exactly what it was. It was
Les Mis,
crowded, and they had the space to move it around, so not.
So, yeah.
I actually got to see the Great Gatsby trailer before Les Mis, and I was like, yeah, I want to see that.
Was it the same? Was it the new trailer? Was it the new trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah, the brand new one. I was like, what?
Did it still have the Kanye song in it?
They do, yeah.
It does.
Yeah, they do.
It sounded kind of crappy, so probably.
Nothing says Great Gatsby like Kanye.
Yeah, because that's like the official Safe House song, right? Safe, I feel like Safe House owns that song, right? They own Jay-Z and Kanye. Anyway, getting back to Les Miserables.
Yes, getting back. If she sings on her own, she wants the D.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the direction from Tom Hooper. And I don't want to keep ragging on Russell Crowe, and this isn't even like a bad thing about Russell Crowe. What I'm going to say here is Russell Crowe is a really good actor. We could agree on that, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And fighting round the way. And sorry, he
Virtuosity is my joint.
Tugga's gonna pull through. Virtuosity, starring Denzel from Safe House.
Mm-hmm.
That Virtuosity.
You got to bring it all together.
Everything's connected. Just Cloud Atlas this one. Right, Abe?
Yeah. We just Cloud Atlas.
When Abe listens back to this recording and hears everything that we just said, because I'm pretty sure he just doesn't know what we're talking about, then he'll get it.
Something on the internet.
Anyway, Russell Crowe is a very good actor. And because of that, I feel like the choice of Tom Hooper to kind of put the camera like right in his face, as he does with everybody in this movie, I think it kind of betrays some of the spirit of the musical. And by that I mean, because we get to see this performance up close and personal, as opposed to kind of sitting in an audience and watching it from a distance, we get to kind of see some of the nuances and things that he's bringing just by him emoting and him, not singing but reacting, and him doing things as an actor that don't involve him using, his mouth necessarily. And because of that, I think it kind of takes away from the impacts that some of his songs should have, which, for a movie that's, this long and covering so many different plot points, makes it kind of noticeable that the movie is fairly long and going over some of the same material when we can focus on other things, like possibly expanding on some of the weaker characters, like Cosette, for example, who's kind of nothing.
I think we all agreed that he spent too much time zoomed in on people, and there's a couple points where it was pretty jarring. But I think my favorite shots in the film were the zoom outs or zoom ins, just the set pieces. Like, for example, just before the title shows, it shows Jean Valjean marching out of the church, and it just zooms out, pans out around the scenery, and just this beautiful setup that actually gives that epic feel that we were expecting from it. So I don't think he fully missed the zoomed out theatrical epic scenery that we're expecting from it. But you're right, I do think that a lot of the actors and actresses were robbed from spending most of their screen time zoomed in.
Yeah.
Oh, no, please continue.
Well, I feel like another example is like when Cosette and Marius first kind of meet up, and the way that scene's shot, like, from that point, you're supposed to believe in their romance, but I didn't really get a sense of that she's the one for him right away, just because of the way it's kind of shot. You're just kind of like, here's two people, and we focused on them being right here together. There's no kind of, not necessarily an epic sweep, but there's no kind of, like, way for the camera doesn't kind of, take you out, like, show you this. I'm like using my hands to visualize this. It doesn't kind of give you a proper, I guess, visual of these two coming together and being truly in love in one another. It just kind of presents them right up close as they're singing this song that just kind of happens because they saw each other once.
And I think that goes back to something that Alan was saying, which is like when he focuses on Anne Hathaway early on, it's like it's perfect. He doesn't do anything. She's just there. She's acting. She's emoting. You can see, I think, like the upper half of her body, and it's really effective. I think one of the other things that is going to the point that you guys bring up is when Eponine is singing her solo song. It's like if he had shown a wider range just to show how alone she really is, I think that would have been greater.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
But it's dark. She's singing in the middle of the night, and she's just really sad. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'll just shoot her in the face. Not literally, but.
But yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I know what.
Oh, that's a sequel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Eponine gets shot in the face. That's a very elaborate title. But
Les Mis Part 2. Still missing.
Still missing. But to take what you just said and to take what Ken said in terms of, they do show some shots of this kind of the scope of things, but they don't focus on it, and that's kind of what gets back to what I was saying to begin with. I mean, the movie has a chance to be so much more grand, has to present much more grandeur, and it chooses not to, and that's kind of disappointing because you have all of France to show up, and yet we're so focused on things, and even the establishing shots are, kind of cut brief. It's just, it seems like it's too much of a hurry to get through a lot of plot, which it does have a lot of plot to get through, but it's not letting me appreciate the fact that there's so much movie to take in. It's just focused on being this weird. It reminded me a lot of like Al, you get this, like a lot of like, or even Ken, like Sam Raimi camera moves, or like Barry Sonnenfeld camera moves, where it's just like intense tracking shot that like just moving all over the place, very wild.
Like Men in Black, the opening scene for Men in Black.
No, it's like Tom Hooper's Raising Arizona. Like it's.
Oh yeah.
The camera's like so like it just wants to move so much, and then when it sits still, it sits right next to you, so it's like breaking your personal bubble. Like it's right there. So,
well, do you think that the camera was trying to emote because it just wanted to dance?
So now, to saying all this, I still do like the movie. I do think it's a good movie, and I do think there's so much good in it that it's hard to deny the fact that there's a lot to present and be fond of, because I think there are great performances here. And even if Russell Crowe's singing voice isn't like the greatest, it's not even that bad. It's just kind of different from everybody else's. I still think his actual like acting work in this movie is very good. I think he presents a good opposing force to Jean Valjean, both men who represent similar things but have gone off different sides of the coin here. So it's.
Listen, if you're complaining about Russell Crowe, just imagine the role with Chris Klein, and it'll just be like, all right, well.
Oh my god. With Chris Klein.
As character in French.
Yeah, I was watching it at some point. I was like, it'd be awesome if Chris Klein played every role. It'd be so good. They're so dumb. Sorry.
I want to ask the folks who've seen the stage production. Is this film like, are they just impacting all the songs like layer by layer, layer by layer, or is it actually a pretty good steady pace?
It's a pretty good steady pace. Okay. Something that it's funny you bring up pacing. That's one of the things I like most about the movie is that the biggest downfall of the live performance is the pacing of it. You have a hard time following it, and there's a couple points, like for example, in Jean Valjean's song "Who Am I?" It has 3 separate scene changes in a 3-minute song, and you're just struggling to keep up with what's actually happening, and so you just can't do it. And so what they did in this is they actually added some verbal dialogue, they added some written text, and they helped set up scenes. So the camera's able to cut to the next scene quickly enough that you are able to follow them, you're able to get introduced to these new locations and follow what they're actually talking about. And so it actually, they cut out some of the songs.
Yes.
Some section of the songs. But overall, the pacing was very much better handled in the movie than the stage performance.
Okay.
I agree with that. At the same time, though, and this kind of gets to another kind of, I guess, negative to the film, I feel like it peaks after the first hour. Basically, after Anne Hathaway's character is no longer in the film. And by peak, I don't mean it gets, like progressively worse, but I do think it doesn't get better than after the first hour of the movie. I feel like it kind of hits a plateau and maybe goes down a little bit just in some areas. But my reasoning from that is I feel like after that first hour, the movie's in a big rush to kind of get a lot of plot points across, which it does well enough, but there's so much story to tell that it feels like I'm just being hurtled from scene to scene in terms of trying to accept these various things that are going on, and especially when you're introducing, 3 or 4 or 5 new characters. I mean, there's a lot of story.
Yeah, and that's how I felt too. That's why I wanted to know how the pacing was in the play, because it felt as though it was really rushing all these songs together to bring you to this somewhat climax toward the end there. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm curious.
Because of that, it kind of relegates Jean Valjean to the background for like a lot of the second act of this movie, which I found kind of interesting because it's his movie, but we're kind of more focused on a lot of more things because of how many things are being introduced to us in the second and third act of the film.
Yeah. But I guess to just wrap up the answer to your question, the live performance, it feels much more rushed in the second act. Okay. I actually usually very much agree with Aaron that the performance peaks in the first act, but I just felt that Hugh Jackman and Russell Crowe's performances just weren't quite up to snuff. So actually, different from you guys in that I thought the second act was much stronger than the first, because I felt like Anne Hathaway really carried the first act, but everyone else was so phenomenal in the second act, and the pacing was done so much better that I actually really cared about the cause and wanted to join in the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
See, I was a bigger fan of the third act, but I think the thing that makes this movie not good but not great is the pacing, because after the first hour, with the Anne Hathaway sequence and everything, I was like, oh, okay, so we're almost done. Oh, balls, we're only a third way through. And then, it's all right. Because, like, with Django's about the same running time, didn't even feel it. With this one, you're like, this is fucking long. So I was like, all right, I'm down, let's go. But, dude, like, after the first act, I'm like, that was a heady hour. I got another 2 of this? All right.
So having gone through this at this point, let's for those listening, let's go to a little. We're going to go to a little more spoilery territory. So we're going to talk about more things that occur in the movie that would essentially ruin the story for you if you had no idea what was going on, or decide to listen to a Les Miserables podcast without seeing the movie. So just putting that in mind, because I want to tell a story about what happened during my screening. So spoilers on now. Basically, after Fantine dies,
Fontaine.
I keep saying Fantine. Fontaine dies.
Fanta.
Don't you want to? Yeah.
After Great Fanta dies, the fire alarm went off in my theater.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, the fire alarm goes off in my theater. I'm at the ArcLight in Hollywood, just for reference. And it's like as Master of the House is starting. And so alarms started going on. I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. I don't think this is part of the song. And then suddenly it's, everyone get out of the theater. So we're all rushing out of the theater. And so we stand outside for like 15 minutes. And we're like, what's going on? There turned out there was like a fight. We were like in the down. There's like 3 floors in the ArcLight there. We were on the downstairs floor watching the movie at our screening. In the upstairs floor, there was a fire in one of like the popcorn machines.
I knew it. Someone burned popcorn. That's all it was.
Yeah, there's a fire in the popcorn machine.
The dorms all over again.
So it caused the fire alarm to go off. And so eventually they let us back in. And so they paused the movie, but they kind of rewound it a bit. So when we got back into our screening, it was the scene where Fontaine dies again. So it was
Wonderful.
It was literally her on the bed with her face like going, she's like, and she dies, and I'm like, wow, this is hilariously dark. And it was the most amazing thing in terms of exactly where to start the movie off. It's like, this great scene of Anne Hathaway's death rattle.
Do you think the employees did it on purpose?
I feel like
They probably did.
I feel like that signaled to me of like, yep, this is where the movie peaked. I guess I was more secure in my thought of that after that.
So for Eponine, her character is off pretty easily. I mean, there's only like a few scenes with her. Did you guys feel differently watching the stage production? Like, do you feel as though her character, do you feel saddened? I didn't really feel that saddened.
Okay, I'll say this. Regardless of the stage production, it did hit me when she died in the movie. That's the only time, besides maybe the end where I was kind of like wrapped up in it just because like, wow, this is cool. Like the Eponine scene was the only scene where I actually like, my eyes got a little watery. I was like,
it's a great song together too. The song is fine, but before that it's just like, oh, well, I guess I'll take one for the team, and surprise.
She pulled the gun. I was like, oh no. I'll say this. I so much appreciated what Samantha Marks was bringing to the movie that I didn't really think about what was going to happen to her character. So I wasn't necessarily surprised, but I was more like, like I gasped. I was like, oh no, I forgot. I wasn't thinking this was going to be the end of her. I still had time to get with her. Like I don't know what happened.
Eponine, no.
Exactly. Yeah. So
yeah, no, it's the stage performance. It's I'd say even less attached to her than I did in the movie.
Oh wow! Okay,
it's her acting that sells it.
Yeah, her acting is.
I think it's again because of despite issues with it, Hooper's direction to kind of you're right there with her. It does help somewhat in that kind of thing.
Yeah, she's just so good at making you feel her love for Marius that when she spent the little time she spends with him, you can tell she's just fully infatuated. Yeah. And so, but also in the stage performance, her death is a little bit more random. She didn't just take a gun and pull it into her own chest. She was more picked off.
Yeah.
Trying to save Marius. So it was a little bit more dramatic in that regard. But no, I would say that the movie I was far more attached to her than I was.
Especially because as much as I think Amanda Seyfried's talented, she doesn't do a lot in this movie, right? I'm not.
I think she sits. And then she stands to give a note, and then she...
No, Adult Cassette's kind of boring.
Yes, she is. There's no real character for her, and so...
Yes.
So, like, meanwhile, I have this other character who's like pouring her heart out in the rain, and I'm like, well, I'm with this girl. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no question.
No question.
But Amanda Seyfried's voice is so nice. It's like so light and fluttery that I feel like this is the only time I've actually really liked adult Cosette. Before, I wasn't really interested. She's kind of boring. There's not much to her. She's that beautiful love interest that's pure, and there's no other development.
Yeah,
She's Joanna from Sweeney Todd.
Yes, that's
there you
exactly
go.
right.
Boom.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. But in this, like, I don't know, just the way her voice sounded, the way it matched up with Marius's, I actually was very much involved in her character a lot more.
Yeah.
Or, I guess found her more of a love interest than this one.
So in Still Mizzen, when Marius and Cosette go on like a treasure hunting adventure to Morocco, well, I'm sure she'll have a lot more to do.
No, they're trying to find Eponine's killer. That's what it's about.
Well, yeah, he's retreated to Morocco with the treasure that he stole from the French castle.
Yeah.
He buried it in Morocco, so they have to go over there.
No, you find out that Javert actually handed Hugh Jackman a treasure map.
Exactly.
And,
yeah. He left it tattooed on his skull. So when Jean Valjean finds his body in the sewers, we can go with. Okay, that's plenty of that.
Wait, at what point does Jean Valjean go to Alaska and get adamantium onto his skeleton?
Before he becomes sheriff and the hockey coach of that town. Mystery Alaska joke. Yeah.
Wow.
Mystery Alaska, directed by Jay Roach, who did Game Change and Recount. Anyway,
That's good.
and the Austin Powers movies.
And Meet the Parents.
Anyway, any other thoughts on Les Miserables that we can go into? We can talk more about Anne Hathaway and how she dies in this movie. Does she die? She dies in this movie. Spoilers.
I was very disappointed that they said, "Oh, come see a shaved Anne Hathaway." That wasn't what I expected.
It never is, Alan.
But on I guess I think that is, I really wouldn't, I didn't expect her to show up in the last song, so that's why I was surprisingly touched, because her voice is very good, and the way that scene is shot it's very well done.
See, that was a scene that was kind of acknowledging the grandeur that this movie could have, and that's something I wanted more of in this film. And that's my ultimate kind of disappointment, is that, well, it's the direction, it's my ultimate disappointment, but the fact that you have a movie like Les Miserables, and you have, you're on the cusp of being shown greater things, and the movie just decides not to do that. That's kind of why I don't love this movie. I certainly appreciate it, and I certainly think it's going to be. I will not be unsatisfied by it getting awards and getting praise from audiences, because I do appreciate what it tried to do, and I just think it's actually just overly ambitious in what it's trying to do. So I certainly like the movie. I wish I could have loved it more.
Yeah.
I do have a casting tidbit. I do like the casting of Amanda Seyfried as Anne Hathaway's daughter, because they both have the same kind of characteristics of big facial features, tiny head. Because, like, big eyes, smaller face, big ear, it just works. I mean, it doesn't make them look ugly, I'm just saying. They look like anime characters.
No one had.
It's like the great-grandmother would be Susan Sarandon.
It is 19th century France, so nobody had bangs, so that's good, right, Alan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, let's move on to our rating then. I think we've discussed Les Miserables thoroughly. Les Miserables thoroughly. And so let's get to our rating. Each week on Out Now, Fair and A, we try to rate movies based on when you should go and see them. By the way, thank God this movie's not in 3D, right? That would have been terrible.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, my God.
I don't know what entertainment that would provide.
The way the camera's moving, you could have easily seen the studio saying, you know what, we should convert this.
You know what, Sean, I was thinking when they considered making it 3D was right before the credits when he rips up his parole papers and it flies off in the wind. The whole time I was thinking, this is a 3D shot.
I think there's a lot of shots in this movie that could have easily suggested, someone in the studio could easily suggest this movie be in 3D and provided plenty of examples because of that.
Yeah.
There's plenty of fodder for them to be like, you see, this is why we should do it in 3D, guys. But anyway, our rating scale for when you should go and see this: IMAX, the theater, to Dollar Theater, Netflix, HBO, TV, or forget about it. Alan, where would you put it on that scale?
I guess, well, it's not great. It's not deserving of all the hoopla, but go see it in the theater because it's still like a big movie. So there's going to be that big epic scene at the end. It's just the epilogue is cool enough to see it on the big screen, and when they're pulling in the boat, it's cool. I'd say go see it in the theater.
That's why I like our rating scale.
Yeah.
Ken?
I would give it a go see it. Simply because it's just the sound quality, the visual.
Where?
Oh, excuse me. Go see it. I was implying a regular movie theater.
Okay.
Or a dollar theater. It's anyone who's not really a fan of musicals isn't going to be changed by this at all. Anyone that really loves the music from this will be very happy with the movie. It doesn't bring too much new to the table, I'd say, but I would say it's definitely worth a watch because it does have quite an epic scale. The music's beautiful. Overall, it's a very emotional experience.
Yep.
That's a dollar theater, and I think that the quality of the music and the sound merits like a theater sound, but I don't think you really necessarily have to rush out and see it immediately.
I agree with Alan. I think it is worth a theater. I mean, matinee.